You know, we're taught that wars are won with bigger armies, better guns, sheer force. But what if that's all just part of the story? This quote, it gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. What if the most important battles in history weren't won with bombs and bullets, but with ghosts and weapons you would never, ever expect?
So today, we're going to pull back that curtain on the real, unwritten rules of war. We're talking about the most ingenious, the most audacious, and sometimes the most bizarre deceptions that have completely tipped the scales of history, all the way from the American Civil War right up through the Cold War.
And our journey starts right in the heart of a divided America. During the Civil War, both sides figured out pretty quickly that sometimes the most powerful weapon you have isn't a rifle. It's a really, really good illusion.
Okay, so here's the setup. It's early in the war. The Union Army has way more soldiers. Their general, George McClellan, who was famously super cautious, is about to crush this little town called Centerville. But a tiny Confederate force somehow manages to hold him off for months. How on earth did they do that?
Well, they used an army made of trees. No, I'm not kidding. The Confederate General Beauregard told his men to create what they called Quaker guns. They were just huge pine logs, painted black, and propped up to look like heavy cannons. From a distance, Union scouts saw this terrifying, impenetrable fortress, and McClellan, totally paralyzed by this illusion, delayed his attack. That bought the Confederates all the time they needed to retreat and regroup. A simple parlor trick, but on a massive battlefield scale?
But this wasn't just a Confederate game. Oh no. The Union had its own secret weapon, and this one was hiding in the most secure building in the entire South, the Confederate White House itself.
Her name was Mary Bowser. To the Confederate elite, she was just a servant, completely invisible. They thought she was illiterate, so insignificant that they would hold top-secret military meetings and leave classified documents sitting on their desks right in front of her. But what they didn't know was that she had a photographic memory. Every single night, she would recite those documents word for word to a Union spy ring. That intel went straight to General Ulysses S. Grant. I mean, the Confederacy was tearing itself apart looking for a high-level leak, and they never once suspected the woman who was pouring their coffee.
All right, let's jump forward in time. As we head into the World Wars, deception evolves. It's not just battlefield tricks anymore. We're talking about complex, global intelligence operations that would literally decide the fate of nations.
Picture this. It's 1917. Britain is getting hammered in World War I, and they desperately need the United States, which is neutral, to join the fight. The key to making that happen wasn't going to be found in a trench somewhere, but inside a single intercepted telegram.
Now this is where it gets really clever. British code breakers in a place called Room 40 decoded this telegram from Germany to Mexico. It basically said, "Hey Mexico, if you attack the US, we'll help you get back Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona." I mean, it was an absolute bombshell. But here's the problem. If they just show it to the Americans, Germany will know their supposedly unbreakable codes are broken. So what do? They invent this brilliant cover story. They pretend a spy stole a physical copy of the message in Mexico. The Americans see it, the public goes nuts, and the US declares war. All while Britain's biggest secret, their code-breaking ability, stays safe. Genius. So if the Zimmerman telegram was a masterpiece of misdirection, what the British did in World War II, well, it was basically a Hollywood movie plot. The Allies needed to invade Sicily, but it was the most obvious target, and Hitler knew it. They had to convince him to move his troops somewhere else. Their solution? A dead man. This was called Operation Mincemeat. British intelligence took the body of a homeless man and created a whole new person, Major William Martin. They gave him a name, a rank, a uniform, and a life. His wallet had photos of a fiancée, love letters, even theater ticket stubs, and an angry letter from his bank about an overdraft. It's those little details that made him feel real. Then, they chained a briefcase to his wrist containing fake plans to invade Greece and dropped his body off the coast of Spain, knowing that Nazi spies would find him.
So, while the British are fooling Hitler with corpses, the Americans are fielding an entire army of ghosts. This unit, the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, wasn't full of battle-hardened soldiers. It was filled with artists, actors, and sound engineers. Their only weapon was their imagination, and their job was to create massive illusions right there on the front lines.
And just look at their arsenal. It's incredible. They had inflatable rubber tanks that looked real to German spy planes. They had huge sound trucks that would blast the recorded sounds of an entire division of troops on the move. They'd send out fake radio messages to make it seem like a huge force was gathering. This ghost army pulled off over 20 major deceptions, tricking the enemy into focusing on the wrong places. They're credited with saving tens of thousands of lives without ever firing a single shot in anger.
And all this creativity really sets the stage for the Cold War. This is where the games of deception get even bigger, more technologically advanced, more expensive, and just unbelievably audacious.
This has to be one of the most surreal military mottos in history, right? During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military had this impossible problem: how to stop supplies from flowing down the Ho Chi Minh Trail. When bombs didn't work, they turned to a much more elemental weapon.
They literally weaponized the weather. It was a top-secret program called Operation Popeye. U.S. planes would fly missions to seed the clouds with silver iodide, which made it rain a lot. They extended the monsoon season by more than a month, turning the supply trail into a huge, impassable swamp. It was so effective and, frankly, so terrifying that it led to an international treaty banning environmental warfare.
But maybe the single most ambitious, most mind-blowing hoax of the entire Cold War answers this one question. In 1968, a Soviet nuclear sub sank in the middle of the Pacific. The CIA found it, and they wanted its secrets, especially the nuclear codes. But how do you retrieve something from 3 miles down, right under the nose of the Soviet Navy?
You hide it in plain sight. The CIA came up with the ultimate cover story. They got the famous eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes to announce he was funding a brand new, futuristic deep-sea mining operation. The media, of course, ate it up. The whole world watched as this massive ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, sailed out to mine the ocean floor. But in reality, hidden inside the ship was a giant mechanical claw designed to descend 3 miles and grab the sub. It was one of the most complex heists in history, disguised as a billionaire's passion project.
So after all these incredible, almost unbelievable hidden stories, what's the real lesson here? What is the real art of war?
So let's look at this arsenal again. It's not about bombs and bullets. Victory was won with painted logs, with a photographic memory, with a dead man who had a fake fiancé, with inflatable tanks, weaponized rain, and a fake mining ship. The one thing that connects every single one of these stories is pure cunning.
And that's really the heart of it, isn't it? The public reads the history books about the big battles and the heroic sacrifices. But underneath that agreed-upon story lies a much deeper truth: that victory often goes not to the strongest, but to the most clever. Which kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. These stories are fascinating, for sure, but they also come with a warning. If our official histories only tell half the story, if they only focus on force instead of intellect, on confrontation instead of cunning, what does that mean for how we try to solve conflicts in the future? Something to chew on. Thanks for watching.
Please like and subscribe.